Welcome back to part 4. We're going to be talking about the public telecommunications network, internet linking, and a little bit on interference. Now this has been a grey area for a long time because radio amateurs were leading the technology and using telephone lines to connect repeaters together, to connect repeaters together in an ad hoc way. In other words, you might have a local repeater and you want to connect it to a repeater in Germany. Well, for quite a few years we've been doing things like using the internet to connect those two repeaters together so that they can be used in parallel. And there are lots of systems today that interconnect radio systems with each other via the internet. And it was a bit of a grey area whether we were permitted to do these things, but we are. And in a nutshell, we can use the internet to connect radio systems together, provided we ensure that no unlicensed persons can get access to those radio systems. So that's the amateur internet linking systems. For example, IRLP. IRLP, if a repeater has IRLP, Internet Repeater Linking Protocol, attached to it, you can, in an ad hoc way, connect any two IRLP repeaters together via the internet. If you want to pause and read what's on the screen, you can, but in a nutshell, it's pretty easy. Repeater linking or linking systems are permitted via the internet, provided that the owners and operators of those amateur repeaters restrict or make it not possible for non-licensed persons to use those repeater systems, those radio systems. That's why if you want to go on things like digital mobile radio network, which is an internet linked network, or IRLP, which is an internet linked network, the operators of that network will have to verify, usually by you sending them your certificate or a copy of your license, that you are a licensed radio amateur. Now, just a little bit about interference. Again, this was taken out of the amateur operators' operating procedures. I think it's important. There's not a lot to remember. It's more of a common sense thing than anything else. And interference today is not the problem it was 20, 30 years ago. Since the introduction of digital television, standards for DTV receivers, domestic appliances, standards for imported radio equipment, interference today is not the problem it used to be. The first paragraph here mentions citizens band a lot. CB radio. 27 megahertz citizens band radio is not the problem it used to be. Likewise, 27 megahertz CB radio is not populated very heavily anymore. So interference between domestic appliances and citizens band radio are not what they used to be. You're very unlucky if you're an amateur station and you'll find yourself causing interference to a neighbour's equipment today. There are exceptions in weak TV signal areas where people have very high masts on their antennas because they've got a weak signal, and sometimes they have an amplifier connected to that mast. That's called a masthead amplifier. These can be overloaded by amateur transmissions and cause problems, but it's fairly rare today. The rest of this paragraph talks about deliberate interference. I'll just leave it on screen because I'll tell you what you can be examined on. Really, what this is talking about is deliberate interference. If you install things poorly or you don't take reasonable steps and you cause interference, it can get you into strife. What the ACMA is particularly interested in is you causing interference to other licensed communication services. Now, a TV is not a licensed radio communication service. Neither is a clock radio, neither is a sound system. They are not licensed radio communication services. They don't have a license. Amateur radio, you have a license. If you are the source of interference to another licensed non-amateur communication service, then you need to stop transmitting until it's fixed. And that's the only situation. So if Joe Bloggs Real Estate down the road from you has got a two-way radio service, that's a licensed radio communication service, and when you're transmitting, they receive interference, you have to stop transmitting. That does not mean it's your fault. It just means that amateur stations must shut down if they are causing or the source of interference to another licensed radio communication service. Now, that doesn't put any blame on you. It just means that needs to be investigated by ACMA to resolve the problem before you can continue to operate. Now, that doesn't apply to a television, a clock radio, a sound system, or anything else. There are situations where if you are causing interference to a TV, the neighbour's TV, strictly speaking, you do not have to shut down. But common sense would dictate that you would exercise diplomacy and try, until the problem's resolved, you would do things like reduce your power, use bands or modes where the interference does not occur. You would try and diplomatically get along with your neighbour until the problem is resolved by you or the neighbour. The neighbour might want to call in a radio television technician. Once upon a time, the radio amateur would get rather involved with the neighbour and put filters on the neighbour's TV or help them fix up their broken TV antenna. Whether or not you do that today depends very much on the relationship you have with your neighbour, because domestic entertainment equipment today is some of it's very expensive. If your neighbour's gone and spent $5,000 on a 500,000 inch TV, and you go and touch it, and you might even fix the interference, and then 6 months later it breaks, guess who's going to get the blame? So it's your call there. Behave diplomatically. Personally, I wouldn't be touching expensive electronic equipment belonging to my neighbour unless I had an extremely good relationship with them. All right, that's it for now. I'll catch you back in the next chapter. This is Ron, VK2DQ. Cheers for now.